Welcome to the Tiga Tactics Podcast, a show about self-defense for civilians by civilians. We discuss all things personal protection, including martial arts, combat sports, and street combatives. Our resident MANs, martial arts nerds, include co-founder of Tiga Tactics and holder of black belt in 9 different styles, Dr. Conrad Bui.
Hello, everybody.
We also have black belt holder in 4 different styles, and the other co-founder, Patrick Vuong.
What's up, guys?
And I am your other co-host, retired Army Special Forces soldier and champion obstacle course racing athlete, Evan Ultra-OCR man Perperis. Today we'll be talking about, can pacifists be martial arts, or can they train martial arts? So this question kind of originated from, when I used to work at the combatives gym, we'd always invite people to train with us. It was all the time. It's like, hey, why don't you come train? You're a soldier. It's good. There's a good atmosphere. You learn skills that may be applicable downrange in combat. And one of the guys was like, he was actually a soldier, obviously not in a combat arms role, but was like, no, I can't. I'm a pacifist. I can't train. And I was like, so, so we'll discuss that question. So, who wants to start off? Can you be a pacifist and a martial artist?
I'll start off. I think it's important to define what pacifism means, or what is a pacifist. And pacifism is basically a school of thought. It's a philosophy, and so of course there are many variations. If you want to go from one extreme to the other, the far extreme is that the hardcore pacifist is someone who does not believe that violence is ever justified. And then there's a little bit more, shall we say, liberal pacifist who does allow for violence in cases of self-defense. And so it kind of depends on your definition on whether a martial artist can be a pacifist. I would like to, I believe that the world is not black or white, but rather gray. There's a mix of all these factors. And so I believe it is possible to be a pacifist and a martial artist. What do you think, Conrad?
Yeah, totally agree. I think sometimes people like to put labels on themselves, or just kind of give sound bites to what's popular during this era of their life, like, oh, I'm a pacifist, a Republican, woke, so I think sometimes, and it's good that you talked about the definition of it, Patrick, because sometimes I think people say I'm this or that, and they really don't give it deep thought on what that is.
So if someone is to the extreme, right, like violence is absolutely never the answer, do you think you can still be a martial artist if you're at that very end, that extreme? Patrick?
For me, I think you can, but you're almost a living hypocrite. You know what I mean? It would be like, my whole purpose in life is to build cars, and cars are awesome, and everybody should have a car, but I'll never drive a car because I hate cars. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of, to me, being a massive hypocrite. That's kind of the definition you mentioned, is kind of the definition of saying like violence is never justified. And I think we have to look at the word martial artist as well. We're looking at the word pacifist and defining it. We should also define martial artist. And there's the martial, and then there's the artist. If you're only thinking about artistry, then technically, yeah, you could, because that's a solo art. That's a solo passion, as a solo pursuit. And you could do martial arts if you're focusing on artistic arts. For example, wushu, in which you're just basically doing a kata or a form, and it's in a competition setting. Yeah, sure, you could be a pacifist in your everyday life, but have really awesome forms. But if you want to speak broadly, there's also the martial aspect of being a martial artist, and that involves fighting, defending yourself and or protecting others. So if we're talking about that extreme definition that you mentioned, then yeah, I would think it's kind of hypocritical to be a super strict pacifist and a martial artist.
Yeah. I think just because you have the skill or capability doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna have to go use it. Even if you're like violence at 100% never the answer. I think you can still train martial arts and be at that extreme end of the spectrum of pacifism, right? Because when I go do jujitsu, like I'm not like, yes, I'm trying to like hyperextend and like choke my opponent, but I'm not like legitimately trying to hurt them. It's a game, realistically, right? Like yes, I'm
Right.
preparing for possible situations, but like while we're in the gym, it's largely a game. And to me, that like you're just playing a game. That's like, oh, I can't play soccer because I might slide tackle someone and they might trip and scrape their knee, or um, if someone's that extreme of a pacifist, do they not play sports, like any sports? Is there no competitive uh, part of their life? Do they not play video games because that's simulated violence? I don't know. The person who said it, I wasn't the one who got that information. It was one of my coworkers. He was the one who relayed the story to me. Uh, Personally, I think that's just someone afraid of unveiling the truth, right? If you never train, you never have to face the fact that you might not be as capable as you think you are, and it's just like living in blissful ignorance.
True, true. Uh, I think this is a largely modern dilemma. You know what I mean? Like, I'm currently reading the book Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. It just shows how violent our species is, and it's just a part of who we are. In fact, it's a part of almost every animal on this planet. Uh, and so that's why I said it's kind of a modern dilemma, because we live in really peaceful times, even though there's chaos in the Middle East and all over the world, really. Relatively speaking, based on our huge history, this is actually a peaceful time, and so people aren't they're not conscripted into armies as much, at least in North America. And so people can kind of say, yeah, I am a pacifist, but historically there were no pacifists. You were either willing to commit violence or you were dead.
Hmm. Good point. Yeah, the relative peace of the 21st century is, it's new. It's a new capability, like you were saying, it's a new capability, new option that's available for people. So, on the extreme side of pacifism, again, this was a combatives, right? We were soldiers. So even if you are an extreme pacifist and you're in the military, you're still like supporting the mechanism of war. Like, yes, you're not the one pulling the trigger or the one dropping the bombs or maybe the one loading the ammunition into the cannon, right? But like, you're still part of that mechanism on some level. So I found that really interesting as well. Like, almost like, why are you here? So, what do you think, Conrad? Give me some more
Well,
thoughts.
man, this is this is a deep topic, and when we came up and decided to talk about this, I just thought, wow, this is a very deep topic, because what we're discussing, it's basically truths. There's going to be peace. There's going to be war. There's going to be safety. There's going to be violence. So this is just truths, and truths generally are universal, and they're also timeless as well too. So and what I mean by universal is, it doesn't matter which part of the world you're in, you can experience these things. It doesn't matter what race you're from or what religion you subscribe to, you can encounter these things. So this is something that's just a universal truth that we all share. Uh, that being said, I want to talk about peace and violence, because that's what we're talking about when we talk about martial arts. And sometimes the general public, they think, oh, you train martial arts, you must be violent, you must subscribe to violence, and violence is the way for you. And the fact of the matter is, to have peace, you must have violence. That you cannot separate the two. It's like left and right. If I cut you in half, you'll still have a left and right. If I cut you in half again, you'll still have a left and right. And if I cut you in half 100 times, you'll still have a left and a right. You cannot have your left without a right, and you can't
Mm,
have a right without the left. And people who just spew words and describe themselves in a superficial level, they haven't, in my opinion, I don't believe they've given it deep thought as to, why is there peace? Well, there can only be peace because there was violence somewhere. Because if there was always peace, we wouldn't know what violence was. And if there wasn't always violence, we wouldn't know what peace is either. And so those two go hand in hand. And if we take a step back and we look at it that way, well, it's simply like what I say, it's an illusion. It's something that we give a label to, peace and violence, and uh, and when we give something labels, it separates those two. But if we really think about those things deeply, they're part of one. It's like this: if you have a coin, you have a head and tail. Yes, you have a head and tail, but yet they're still part of the same coin. If you split that coin in half, you'll still have a head and tail side, if you will. And so, we can look at it that way. We can also let's look at violence as well too. Yes, we want peace. I'm a pacifist myself, and well, I consider myself a pacifist. In thinking and in ideology, I consider myself a pacifist. But as a pacifist, as someone who loves peace, I need to deeply study violence as well too, because I know that's on the other side of the same coin. And if I can appreciate both sides, I can understand the peaceful side even more. And I'd suggest whoever's listening who says I'm a pacifist, or someone who says they're a pacifist, to look at violence as just a tool. It's a tool that you might have to use sometimes. It's just like any other tool, whether that's a hammer to build a home with, or you use the same hammer to protect yourself, or a knife or firearm, something like that. These are simply tools, and we can use that tool to bring about violence. Yes, yes, there's criminals that use it, uh, and execute others, or use it for criminal purposes. And yet we can also use that tool to bring harmony and peace to our environment as well too. Uh, I often look at like Shaolin monks who are monks that practice quote unquote violence, if you will, and they're able to do both with peace, and they don't see any difference between the practice of Buddhism and the practice of martial arts, because they understand that if they need to use their martial arts or quote unquote violence, that you can use it as a tool for good. And of course, like any tool, we can use it for good or evil. And if we choose to use that tool for good, we can create more goodness with that. We can create peace with that as well too. And that's just something. If somebody's like, what's he talking about? Think about it deeply. If somebody's out there and maybe they're shoving over elderly people, and you see that, and you go and you stop them, and you can't just stop them with your mouth because he's in the act of shoving people over. What else can you do? You've got to resort to something physical, and that's just a tool at that time to bring peace, and maybe, if you will, balance back into the situation.
Yeah, the all excellent points that I think you nailed it pretty good. It's a tool, right? I mean, I don't think anyone listening would be like, oh, the World War II Americans that helped free like the concentration camps, like they were, like that they were using violence to eventually free victims of
Mhm.
the concentration camps in World War II. Like I don't. There are times when violence, unfortunately, is part of the solution. Is it always the right solution? Obviously not. And are there people who claim to be peaceful, but still do violence that's not justified? Yes, right. Yeah, it's yeah, a little deeper than I was expecting to go for this topic. From a Christian perspective, um, there are, there's history in the church of soldiers who the talking Catholic and Orthodox specifically, that they recognize them as saints. Not necessarily because of the violence they were doing, but it was a part of their profession, and then they eventually did things that were holy or worthy of praise, where they were elevated to like a high level. I do like on my Patreon channel, I did like I think a 10 or 15 minute deep dive where like if anyone's curious about that specific aspect of like pacifism and Christianity and violence and kind of where those intersect. I did like a little video on that, but yeah, I think there's precedence. Precedence doesn't necessarily make it right, but I think there is ample precedence and if we really think about it logically, like you were talking, Conrad, I think you can come to the conclusion that sometimes, unfortunately, that is the answer. Patrick, what do you got? Any thoughts?
I agree with both of you. I think sometimes violence is justified, but our goal is to be pacifistic. And for people who like to use labels, they don't understand that. I recently got a question from one of my good friends, and she said, "So, are you a Republican or are you Democrat? Are you hardcore right or are you a liberal?" Because she couldn't figure me out, and I said, I'm it kind of depends on the situation. Kind of depends on the situation of the topic. Like, I don't like labels. I would like to think of myself as an independent thinker. So when it comes to pacifism, I don't like the idea of yes, I'm 100% pacifist, or yes, I'm 100% pro violence, or I'm 100% martial artist. There will be times and places in which I will kind of be more what shall we say, fluid about it, right? And so I look at the people that I really admire, and they're all flawed, but one of my flawed heroes is Theodore Roosevelt, and his most common phrase was "walk softly, carry a big stick." And to me, that's pacifism. Like, he's maintaining peace by having a really crazy strong military presence, right? How can you argue that he's being violent if he's not going to drop a single bomb? So I think it's really important to look at these people who've come before us and had to grapple with the idea of maintaining peace through violence or the threat of violence. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're a violent person, but you have to really be capable of doing great harm in order to protect yourself, protect your family, or in the case of Roosevelt, protect your country. One of the quotes I'll read from him real fast here is that he said, "The pacifist is as surely a traitor to his country and to humanity as is the most brutal wrongdoer." And I think there's some truth to that. It doesn't apply 100% to all of history. Obviously, fans of Mahatma Gandhi would disagree, but in most situations, I would say that Roosevelt is correct here. You have to be capable of great violence in order to maintain that peace, to protect the people and things you love.
Yeah, I love quotes like that. What have to do with in order to be capable of peace, you have to have essentially the capability to do violence. Otherwise, it's not you're not peaceful. Your weakness. There's been I've heard a couple people make similar. I'm paraphrasing several people, but I've heard several people make a quote like that, and but I know personally, like I feel like I've taken that to heart, both in my job and then training for the military, and then my future vocation, God willing, as a priest. So that's something I personally take to heart, and I think it's important. You want to be strong because you want to be able to protect your family. You want to be able to protect the people around you, your friends, etc. Yeah, I think that then you're truly then you can be peaceful because you have the option. You literally have the option, and you're choosing to be peaceful and choosing to be nice, kind by choice, if you will. Almost like
Right, exactly.
almost like that's a slogan I've heard before.
right. Yeah, Conrad, you should quickly explain what kind by choice means for people who jumped in for the first time.
Kind by choice. That kind of goes with the theme of today. Absolutely. We our was it 3-step mindset: stay alert, stay humble, stay kind. It goes right into that kind by choice. And if you're capable of, like what you said, Patrick, of violence, of extreme violence, effective violence, then you can be kind by choice. And that makes you virtuous because you have that choice. If you're harmless, you don't have that choice at all. You're simply harmless. And like your quote there,
Roosevelt right here: "The pacifist is as surely a traitor to his country and to humanity as is the most brutal wrongdoer."
Yeah, exactly. If you're harmless, you're kind of just harmless. And so, yeah, kind by choice. Absolutely.
And if anyone's looking for some sweet kind by choice swag, if you head over to the Tiga Tactics website, check out the merchandise shop on there. You can rep that gear. my stay alert, stay humble, stay kind shirt. I have like a hoodie with that, and I've gotten so many compliments on that over pretty much like almost every other piece of clothing I have, which is kind of funny. And then people always ask questions. They're always like, "Oh, what is that?" And it's like, actually, it's a self-defense company. And they're like, "Oh, that's weird. There's no like skulls with like knives going through the face, and like
Snakes going through the skull.
yeah, all sorts. And it's like, no, it's a self-defense company. It's just generally good advice for being a good person." So
Right. All right. Well, I'd like to share a few other quotes, actually.
go for it.
And this one's from the Bible, Romans. Uh, Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. All right. And I want to share another quote from Buddha, and it's very similar. Hate is not overcome with more hate, it's overcome by love. And so if we look at the word good as well as the word love, why was martial arts even invented? Why was there even violence? A lot of times it's to protect your family, to protect your community, to protect those you loved. And so violence is born from being good, is born from love as well too. And I talked about this before. There really isn't much of a division between the two. They're part of a whole. And so if we use that tool for good and for love and recognize that the violence came from being a good, virtuous person, or from the act of love, protecting your family, protecting your community, protecting your country, people can understand that it's just part of that whole there.
Good stuff. Any final? Should we start wrapping it up? What do you think?
Yeah, I think we hammered this point in pretty good.
All right. Any final thoughts before we get to shout outs on can you be a pacifist and be a martial artist, Patrick?
Yes, I think pacifism can be a part of martial arts as part of being a martial artist, as long as you understand that the yang side of that is that you're going to be capable of extreme violence when and if necessary.
Conrad, any closing statements there?
Correct. Have a balance. Be a whole person. Don't put labels on yourself. Don't try to divide yourself. Don't try to divide other people as well.
Yeah. So yeah, I think you can totally be a pacifist and be a martial artist. Again, there's like we talked about, both with all the capable of violence and being peaceful, and then martial arts is just so diverse, right? Like you were talking about, there's katas, there's forms, there's shadow boxing. It's for fitness, it's for self development, it's for playing a game, right? Like you don't have to go out there and like do competition like if you want to go back and listen to that other episode, right? Like if that's too is not that's not pacifist enough for you, like you can still train and you can still have fun and you can essentially treat it as a game that increases your fitness, increases your confidence, increases your ability to learn new skills, and then increases your self protection at the same time.
Absolutely.
All right, final shout outs we need to give. Start off with Patrick again.
I want everybody to be aware of the first weekend of May 3rd to 4th, I believe. We will be in the greater Baltimore area in Maryland to teach an in-person seminar. We're teaming up again with the Academy of Traditional Asian Fighting Arts and Guru Scott Sobel there. And it's going to be another great, excellent time. So put that on your calendar.
Yeah, the whole team will be there, including Evan and the Bam, Willie the Bam Johnson as well too. So it'll be a fun time.
Yeah, what else we got coming up?
We've got tons of programs lined up, a lot more seminars. If everybody wants to check out where we will be and if we'll be in your neighborhood, go to tigatactics.com and check out the seminar schedule. You'll get a full list there. We've got webinars, in-person seminars, and we've got several online courses coming up.
And I'll also drop that link for the seminars in the show notes down below, so you can check that for the option to see what's coming up. Also, we've got the runners webinar coming up February 23rd, talking about safety as a runner, right? Or a walker or a hiker. I know it's called runners webinar, right? But the same principles can be applied to walking or hiking, going on a walk with your family, etc., or going on a walk with your dog. I know a lot of people have dogs, right? Like the exact same principles kind of cross over essentially 1-to-1. So definitely check that out. I think there's a price increase coming up in a couple days, so I would, as soon as you listen to this, I would go sign up immediately.
Yeah, please join us for that. I know some people might think, oh, I know all this stuff. Even if you do know all this stuff, having a review is a tremendous benefit for you and also for your family too. Please join us. Get your mom, your dad, your spouses, your kids in on it as well too, and have a refresher. I know a lot of what we'll be sharing may not be new to you, and I'm sure there will be some things that are new to you. And have the whole family, the whole community come and join us, because this is something that can save your life. This might not be as sexy as grappling or knife fighting or firearms training or anything like that, but this is the basics that you use day in and day out. So please join us.
And I think that's an excellent point. You know, there's a lot of spouses who don't necessarily want to listen to their husbands, or maybe vice versa. You know, this isn't something where you can sign up and then be like, "Oh, look what I signed up for. I just happened to put it on the big screen." You know, like you just kind of you try to trick them into watching, or you're like, "Hey, let's listen to what these guys have to say." And even though we're saying the same thing that maybe you have told your spouse a dozen times, because it's coming from someplace else, sometimes that sticks and hits a little bit harder, and they will actually now adhere to that advice. So,
Oh, absolutely. I run into that problem all the time, and so Valentine's Day is the last day for our early bird sale. So if you're thinking of getting a gift for your spouse or your loved one, consider enrolling them into the webinar. Because like Evan, like you said, you know, I'm sure all the warriors out there have been trying to tell their spouse, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, and they just ignore it because it's coming from you. So now you can convey that message, but through us. So please join us. And remember, even though it's called the runner's guide to self-defense, it's for anybody who walks in public. And come on, who doesn't walk in public?
walk in public, right? Yeah. All right. Yeah. So check that out. Check out my book if you want to deeper dive into the topic as well. And then also check out my Patreon if you're interested in some more martial content for a couple bucks a month. Find anything else we need to give a shout out before we get going, Patrick?
No, this is great. That's it. You hit the nail on the head. Thank you so much for hosting this, and everybody who's listening, thank you for supporting us with your ears and joining us online through our social media. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. And if I'm actually heading out the door to Kuwait tomorrow as of this recording, so if anyone wants to see what racing in Kuwait looks like, head over to my social media page. Again, all the links and stuff are in the show notes down below. It's Ultra-OCR Man is my Instagram. I'll be posting some videos and race highlights from racing in the Middle East. Again, yeah. Thanks again, everyone.
All right, take care. Happy Valentine's Day, and show the love. Practice martial arts. Get some Tiga tactics training in. Take care, everyone.